Walsh, starting off the very first episode of my new podcast, Happy Campers. If you're wondering about the name refers to the fact that I call, and other people in the Friday 13th community call ourselves campers. Kind of like the Freddy fans call themselves Dream Warriors. Well, anyway, this is the first episode, and I want to talk about the film that really cemented me as a Friday fan. Because I was a fan since the 80s. The first horror movie I ever watched was Friday the 13th. I watched it with my brother when I was about 4. And Jason became part of my life. I used to draw hockey masks and all kinds of stuff in my notebook in school. I loved everything Friday the 13th. And I had all the books, like the novels. I had started collecting the comic books for Jason Goes to Hell. I remember it was around early 93. I was visiting family members and I was watching MTV Beavis and Butthead Marathon. And the trailer for Jason Goes to Hell came out and I lost my shit. I said, I have to see this. And then later on, it was around August when it came out, I got to sneak into the Dollar Theater because my mom and my sisters took me to the movies to see some Macaulay Culkin thing with him as whatever, and like I snuck in and I watched a little bit of Jason Goes to Hell, and I was like, yes. So then it became a part of everything. So that's the film I wanted to talk about because there's certain things I love about it, and I don't understand how some people hate it, but I respect the fact that if you don't like it, I'm not saying you should like it. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm just saying that me personally, in my opinion, I love certain aspects of it. I think it's a great film, and I have spoken to Adam Marcus a few times. He's a really nice guy, and he's very down to earth, very loyal to the fans. But little moments in the Friday, it just goes to hell that I love. I love the fact that like within the first 2 minutes, you get all these slasher cliches jump together. You know, you get like the light bulb burns out and like the jump scares. All of a sudden, Jason pops out, and the woman that we're following from the beginning, whenever she walks around the house, she ends up being chased by Jason in the woods, and all of a sudden, bam! They got all these FBI agents coming in, and boom, 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 and he's exploded into piles of burnt wreckage. And it was like, whoa. That was like, what the fuck? That we just see. And then we get the body shaping thing. And certain cliche moments in the movie, I liked how they took the cliche and turned it around and made it different. Because the one thing I thought was funny about that one, because I've seen that movies before, where the monster's chasing the character, and the character has a friend a little ways away, and they toss him the gun, and they toss it to him not at the right time, and they die. But in Jason Goes to Hell, that moment happened, but the character got the gun, shot Jason up, and he still came out there and killed him. There's little moments like that I loved about Jason Goes to Hell. I mean, it's not a bad movie, but, you know, this Friday 13th. I mean, they had to do something different eventually. I mean, I understand Sean Cunningham, after the fiasco of Part 8, they wanted to do something different, and, like, I can understand that because, you know, they've been doing the same thing for so long, but then what bugs me about the Friday 13th films is the outsiders, not the campers like us, but the outsiders who watch it, they'll say things like, yeah, no, the movie's not exactly the same. He wakes up and kills everybody. No. Jason was a child and jump scare at the end of Part 1. He didn't start killing until Part 2. He didn't get his mask till Part 3. He technically died in Part 4. And they had Roy the copycat in Part 5. Then he's resurrected with lightning in Part 6 like Frankenstein. And then he fights the Carrie clone in Part 7. Then he goes to New York, and then Jason Goes to Hell. He's a vice type of thing. Then they get back to the basics with Jason X, where he's just Jason, but then they throw him in outer space. Which isn't a bad thing either. It's hard to pin down who my favorite Jason is, because I love all of them. I would love to meet all of them. I mean, the one I remember the most that freaked me out was Part 2, the scene. I watched it with my dad. And he was a character. He was just like Captain Spaulding from House 1000 Corpses. He was just like Sid Haig. And we were watching part 2 on USA's Up All Night. And right after the scene where Alice opens the refrigerator and sees Mrs. Voorhees' head in the fridge and then gets stabbed with an ice pick, as soon as that scene happened, my dad looked at me, looked at this 9-year-old boy and said, "Go to the fridge and get me a beer." Sorry, I'm fighting a cold. This is my first episode. I didn't want to screw it up, but I'm fighting a cold. But anyways, I just remember that, and it freaked me out. But he was a character. He's probably what made me. My dad and my brother were pretty much what got me into horror. And then they said, "Well, you grew out of it. Why do you still watch that stuff?" And then I was like, "I love it." I became a fan. And let's see, we're going to get off topic. Okay, this is the first episode. I want to talk about the controversial one. Because you talk to a lot of fans and they hate Jason Goes to Hell. A lot of fans hate it. They'll pick it apart and say all kinds of horrible things about it. And it's like, I don't understand why. I mean, it's not like the film physically hurts you. It's got its flaws. But, you're talking about a franchise where one of those franchises, a killer in a mask goes around stabbing people. And I love the fact that they put different things in there. Like, you read the novels, like the Jason X novels, they try to connect him back to, like, the Salem witch trials and all this alchemy shit. And it's pretty cool. I mean, Jason's a very versatile character. I mean, you can do anything with him, and, like, he's just still Jason. And you throw him anywhere, and, like, it's just like Jason goes here, Jason goes there. But the character never changes. The character stays the same. He's basically the hand of God, or like the shark from Jaws. He's basically just this killing machine. And he has no emotion. And it's kind of fun to, like, play with that. Because they tried to put, like, sympathy or anything. Like when Freddy vs. Jason, they tried to get into his childhood and try to understand what he really is. And then Alice in part 2 was talking about, and she actually used psychology on him to say to fool him, to make him think, "Oh my God, it's my mom." I mean, if you're a Friday the 13th novice, and I'm sorry if I'm going over things you probably haven't seen yet. No, I don't want to spoil anything for you. I already have, but anyway, so if you're a Friday the 13th novice, I suggest you start from the beginning. Just watch 1 through 12. And if you're not, thank you for being so awesome, because I love meeting other people who are just awesome, who love this stuff. Because it is sort of like Star Trek, which was the thing I wanted to do with the movie Happy Campers, but I never got the funding and never got off the ground, was to travel around and interview you guys, the fans, the ones who love this stuff, because I love all the cosplay stuff. I see it all on Facebook all the time. People are making hockey masks and suits and hoods and busts and collecting figurines and everything. It's cool. It is something magical about this stuff. It is a community. That's why I call it Happy Campers. You guys are happy. You're camping around. You're enjoying these movies. And it's a part of your life. And people argue about which ones they like better, but in all, we're all still fans. We all still love each other, and we respect each other, which is cool. Because the controversial ones, like Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X, the favorite Jason, that was the thing that was different. Because like the Paramount ones, 1 through 8, were their own thing. I mean, basically, it's like Frank Mancuso Jr. took over at part 3 as producer, and he kept the series going up until 89. And he produced all these sequels, but he knew what to make of Jason, how to make Jason cool. You know, he knew what Jason would do good in, what he would do bad in. Like, the first one he produced was part 3. That one, he decided to do that one in 3D to make it an event. And it was the highest grossing one in the franchise up until Jason versus Freddy. Because he knew how to play with the audience. And he had Steve Miner as director for part 2 and 3. And he knew what he was doing. So, after that, then you got... Each one was a gimmick. And it was a ride. It was an experience. Because if you were a kid in the 80s like me, I was born in 81, it was a rite of passage. You had to watch at least one Friday the 13th movie from beginning to end. Otherwise, you weren't cool. Because we sit around the playground at recess, and we talk about these movies. This is where we were just friends. We were like, oh, did you see that one yet? Did you see... Did you see how Jason's mask got split in half by that girl's telekinetic powers? Did you see that part where the guy got his head split open with the axe? Or you see when that kid in the wheelchair got slammed and threw down the flight of stairs? We talk about this stuff. It was like kind of like the sports guys when they talk about one of the cool touchdown or whatever whenever a team won. That is what these movies are for us. So like I said, this is my first podcast ever. I hope I'm doing okay. So far so good. So if you, like I said, if you are not really knowing much about Friday the 13th, you're just listening to this just to listen to it, thank you. You're awesome. So I suggest you go out. They're all on Pluto TV. You gotta get them all on Pluto TV, or probably one of those streaming services has them all. But just sit there and watch them, because they are an experience. It's just amazing to me the fact that films that were so scary in 1982 are not considered comedies. People laugh at them and make fun of them and crack up, like Mystery Science Theater 3000. But that's the experience. I mean, it was scary when we were kids. The 80s was a scary time. 80s horror is big now because of my generation. We grew up with this stuff. We grew up with Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, Child Play, Monster Squad, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, Hellraiser. We grew up with all that stuff. That was part of what we were. The slasher boom started because of Friday the 13th, 1980. Then they had all these copycats coming out afterwards. And some claim that Halloween was the first. Well, Halloween was like the most polished one. Halloween was the pretty one. That's the one that really got people like, yeah, I like this. But Friday the 13th, which basically ripped off Halloween, this is what they claim. Sean Cunningham has claimed thousands of times that, like, he just saw Halloween and said, let's do that. So that's pretty much what everybody was saying. And then us as fans in the 80s were like, we couldn't get enough of this shit. We go to video stores and we would look for stuff like Black Roses and Dolly Dearest and Child's Play and Psycho 3, which is awesome. If you love Psycho movies, Psycho 3 is the best one to be in the franchise. It's the coolest one to me, aside from the first one. But anyway, getting off topic, I go on tangents. I'm ADD and now I'm finding it cold. I'm trying to think. But hopefully this is going well. If it's good, leave comments and stuff. 14 minutes in. I'm trying to think. So basically, I've been rambling. But it's a good ramble. First episode, you're going to ramble a lot. But the main thing I wanted to talk about was the difference between the New Line era of Friday the 13th and the Paramount. The Paramount era was consistent. We had antagonists and protagonists. We had a continuing story, and they acknowledged each other. Then came the time whenever Paramount sold the rights to Jason and the Friday the 13th to New Line, and then New Line started doing their own thing. Because basically all they had was Jason. They couldn't use Tommy Jarvis. They couldn't use Mrs. Voorhees. They just had Jason, so then they did Jason Goes to Hell, and they tried to do their own thing with it, which is cool. It's a cool movie. It's a really good movie. If you look at it for what it is, it's kind of like Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. You know, it's kind of like, it's a different thing, but it's still kind of in that universe. But then Jason X comes out. And Jason X is pretty much just like a throw ride. It's like they threw everything at you. It's like a circus. It's like a psycho circus. You're all gimmicks. And then Freddy vs. Jason came out, which was a big gimmick. And that's the one I was there for. I was there opening day. Saw that one with the crowd, and I got into arguments. I remember there was this big Hell's Angels biker guy sitting behind me, and he screamed out, "Freddy rules! Fuck Jason!" And I just looked at him, and I didn't want to fight him. That's what was going to happen. He was trying to start a fight. Which is kind of like a sporting event, because I've seen that in sporting events too, where, like, you know, you go to, like, Boston and you scream out, you like the Yankees, and everyone wants to beat the shit out of you. So that's the main thing I want to say, because, like, as far as horror fans go, you guys, maybe nerds or freaks, because or goths or punks or whatever, and the jock guys, the preppy guys make fun of you for being weird and liking this stuff. Fuck them. Be yourself. If you love this stuff, wear it with pride. Wear a Friday 13th shirt, a bin, baseball cap, whatever. Wear it with pride, because you are a happy camper. And we are all a part of a family. I think that's about enough, because my throat's starting to hurt, and I was coughing and stuffy. I'll do another podcast soon. In the meantime, thanks so much. Please subscribe, leave comments, whatever. And hopefully I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye. Well, hello. Welcome to another edition of Happy Campers. I'm your host, Reggie Walsh. And tonight's show, we're going to talk about something that I found interesting. I don't know if anyone else found this interesting. That the similarities between the Friday the 13th franchise and the Saw franchise, which is about to have a new edition later this year. If you think about it like this, both films were independent. Both films started a franchise. Both films had a similar director for 2 and 3 that worked on part 1. Both films tried to kill themselves off in the 4th one. There's so many different similarities. It's amazing. I love the torture porn franchise that started in the early 2000s with Saw and Hostel, and then all these other films that came out after. It was basically like all the stuff that they were afraid to do in the 80s that they couldn't do because of the MPA. They're not able to do, and it's almost like grossing you out as much as possible. And I remember I was working at the movie theater whenever Hostel came out, and actually had people come in ambulances from another movie. Something happened, and they used it in the theater to kind of boost up the Saw and Hostel hype, which is amazing. I love stuff like that. But it's like they create these characters, and if you look at the Friday the 13th franchise, it pretty much didn't really have a formula yet. Basically, the formula was like start out with a kill at the beginning, and then introduce a bunch of characters, and then have them all killed off one by one toward the film, end of the film. They had the obligatory chase scene, usually in a barn or in the woods or whatever, and that was it. But it didn't really have a voice, and that's what I love about it. It was organically just created its own voice as the films went on, and that's what I love about it. I could go on and on about stuff like that. I love Friday the 13th. That's why I started doing this podcast. And I'm going to keep doing this podcast as long as I can. Hopefully you guys listen, like, leave comments or whatever, voice messages or whatever, here on Anchor or whatever other platform you can hear this on. Let me know what you think. This is about you guys, the fans, the ones who love Friday the 13th, the ones who love Jason, and want a voice to say, yeah, look, this is what's happened. Because if you look at the history of it, it goes into all the different mediums. You had the TV series, you had the novels, you had the comic books, you have music groups like Alice Cooper doing songs for Part 6. And then you have, like, most people in my generation remember the 1998, was it 98 or 99? I can't remember, the Joe Bob Briggs 24-hour marathon, 12-hour marathon. It was like from dusk till dawn, like 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And that was the coolest thing ever. I loved that. I was there for that one all night, staying up watching, and they did the whole fake out killing all the crew and Joe Bob Briggs by himself, and they never revealed who the killer was. And then it was just like all of a sudden, 6 a.m. exactly, everything went to static, and that's when they started playing Ultraman. I was like, what the fuck? I had this cold, empty feeling inside after that. I was like, what the hell just happened? They're done. And then next week, Joe Bob was just back to doing his regular thing. But that's what I miss. I miss gimmicks like that. They used to do that in theaters all the time, and I need to bring it back. I remember, I'm getting off topic. I didn't talk about theater and theatrical stuff. What I love is, that was one of my main goals. Was for years was to open my own theater and do like William Castle style gimmicks and have people come in and do things like the insurance policy in case you die of fright, or like the fright pills, or the scared, if you're scared, they got like the 30-second timer, say this is whenever it's going to get really scary, so you better leave if you can't handle it, you know. And because that stuff's missing. Then Aroma Vision. But then that goes into Friday the 13th. Friday was an event film back in the 80s, and I was a kid. I didn't get to experience it like most of you guys who are fans, who were teenagers in the 80s and were actually old enough to go to the theater and watch these movies in the theater. I mean, this was a gimmick. This was an event. These were amazing films. I mean, I've heard stories about how, like, how it was like a rock concert for part 4 whenever everybody was cheering whenever Tommy Jarvis killed Jason at the end of part 4. It was supposedly the final chapter. And then they're like, whoa, this made a lot of money. Let's make another one. And then they just kept going. It became his own entity. Jason became a part of our lexicon, like Jason, Freddy, and then Michael Myers came out. And yeah, then I go off on a tangent. I don't want to go on a tangent, but they talk about the fact that they tried to kill Michael Myers off in part 2, and they said we're done. Then part 3 came out, and it was about the killer masks and the Druid cult. That was their attempt to kind of step out of the slasher genre into like the more supernatural horror genre, which is cool. And then Friday the 13th part 5 tried to turn it into like a whodunit mystery thing. Yeah. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. I go off topic. I go all rambling. This is probably what people will probably get into, is like the rambling. I'm still getting over a cold. But anyway, so main topic I was thinking about was that just of the idea of these movies starting their own subgenres. Like Friday the 13th started the slasher genre. It didn't really start it because you had like 10 Little Indians for Agatha Christie, and then you had like Psycho and Homicidal and Peeping Tom, and then Black Christmas and Halloween and When a Stranger Calls, and then you had all these other movies came out after it, like Happy Birthday to Me and New Year's Evil and Open House, that started the whole 80s slasher genre. But pretty much Friday the 13th set the standard for what a slasher film should be. And it kept it going up until probably about 86, 87. That's when people got tired of it, and they started doing more supernatural stuff. Like Prom Night 2 was more in vain with Nightmare on Elm Street. And then you got Night of the Demons and Black Roses and all these different monster demon horror movie monsters. Evil Dead 2 came out around that time too. And then, but there's something magical about the early 80s slasher films. One of them I played on my show, Midnight Chillers, a while back. It was, can't find the episode anywhere. It's lost. We played Aerobicide or Killer Workout, which was an 80s slasher movie set in a gym, like an aerobic gym, and the killer was the owner of the gym and was killing off people in the gym that pissed her off. And it started with the whole big thing, like the the nucleus of a slasher movie, an 80s Friday 13th inspired slasher movie, is you have something happen in the pre-credit sequence. A past event happened that caused some pain, and then the characters in the present are oblivious to it and starting to do something that pisses off the character who was hurt in the previous scene. So they're going out and killing people. And it goes from there. Like Happy Birthday to Me, you got My Bloody Valentine, The Prowler, Intruder. And then when you got the torture porn stuff in the early 2000s, I can't think of all of them. There were so many. Most of them went direct to video. But it was like this whole big thing of like, let's gross people out as much as possible. And then each film after Saw 1 had to up the ante, like, and make it bigger and bigger. And same with Friday the 13th. They had to keep having the kills more and more elaborate. Like part 3, they had the eyeball crush pop out because it was in 3D. And then 4, you had the nurse getting gutted. And then Jason's death at the end of part 4, which was glorious. Tom Savini magic. He's a genius. He's a god in the horror genre. He can do no wrong. And then you got part 5 and onward but then they tried. That's one thing I never understood is like they tried so hard after part 5, after part 4 to 4 and 5 to neuter the films. They say you can't do this, but that's what the money came from, was doing that. So they got mad at them for doing what the audience wanted. They say this is immoral, but then nowadays everything's unrated. I mean, you watch a movie, a DVD, you rent a DVD now, and it says unrated version, too hot for theaters or whatever. Which I think it's crazy, but back in the day you couldn't do that. So if they cut it out, you didn't see it at all. You were done. And then, like part 7, there's scenes that are lost forever because they're considered too violent. The MPA said no, we can't have this, and then they just got left on the shelf, and then film deteriorated and they're destroyed, and they're lost forever. So we never see these deleted scenes except for really grainy VHS copies that John Carl Buechler had. They put on the DVDs back in I think it was like 2004 or 5, whenever the box set came out, the first box set, the 1 through 8 Crystal Lake to Manhattan Project box set, which I still have somewhere. It was great at the time because before that, like, you fans don't know how lucky you are, the younger ones, because when we were fans as kids, all we had was Fangoria and like Gore Zone and Slaughterhouse magazine to see this stuff, and the VHS back in the day. And we hear rumors, you hear stories that say like, oh, there's cut scenes, there's this or that. The rumors that never came to fruition, but they were just rumors. And the actors involved I think they were ashamed of these films up until a few years ago, which is funny because then they're all coming out of the woodwork saying, "Yeah, I was in that." And then they go to conventions and stuff, and it's cool. Ted White used to be ashamed of it, but then he came around because of you guys as fans and your support and saying how awesome these movies are. And you guys, these actors like Corey Feldman came out and said, "Yeah, I'm a Friday the 13th guy." So like I would keep saying, this podcast is for the fans. That's why it's called Happy Campers. You guys are happy campers. You're campers. You love Friday the 13th, which is camp, and you're happy about it. So I want to hear from you guys. So send me messages and everything. Like I said, I'm fighting a cold right now, so my throat's about to give out. I think I've ranted enough for about 12 minutes now. So I'm going to give it a rest and let myself relax for a little while. So if you want to hear more, just send me a message. Subscribe to the podcast. Love hearing from you guys. All right. Adios. Next episode, I'm going to talk about the reboot and how it pretty much summed up the first 4 films and how it was a lot better than people thought it was when it first came out. Well, hello. Welcome to another edition of Happy Campers. I'm your host, Reggie Walsh. And tonight's show, we're going to talk about something that I found interesting. I don't know if anyone else found this interesting. That the similarities between the Friday the 13th franchise and the Saw